Before you dive into this story, imagine this. An elite SEAL team, America's finest, pinned down by overwhelming enemy fire, their mission seconds from collapsing, retreat already ordered, when one lone woman, a soldier they underestimated, walked into the chaos with nothing but grit, precision, and unshakable courage. She didn't just change the battle, she rewrote history. If you want more incredible stories of bravery, make sure you subscribe right now, because what you're about to read will leave you stunned. The breaking point. The desert night was alive, with fire tracer rounds slicing the black sky, explosions shaking the ground as the SEAL team fought tooth and nail to hold their ground. Their mission had started as a covert strike, a precise infiltration to dismantle a heavily guarded enemy command post where two high-ranking generals were rumored to be directing an entire insurgent division, but intelligence had underestimated the sheer scale of forces surrounding the compound. Within minutes, the SEALs were trapped in a killing zone, their comms screaming with reports of flanking maneuvers, their ammo dwindling under the relentless barrage. The order came through with brutal clarity: retreat, fall back, extraction point compromised. Men who had fought countless battles knew this was one they might not survive, yet even as they began pulling back, the sound of boots striking gravel rose against the roar of war, a single figure advancing instead of retreating. She was not part of their unit, at least not in the way they knew. She had joined only days before, sent from another command, and most of the men hadn't trusted her presence. But now, in the worst moment of collapse, she stepped forward, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the inferno ahead, walking directly into enemy fire as if fear itself had no place in her blood. What the SEAL team didn't know was that this woman carried with her not only combat experience, but a personal vendetta etched into her soul, a fire that had been lit years before when war had torn through villages and families she once knew, when she had seen cruelty firsthand and vowed that one day she would stand between innocents and the monsters who thrived in blood. Her training was not ordinary. It had taken her through the cold brutality of Arctic drills, desert survival that broke lesser soldiers, urban warfare where every shadow could be death, and sniper ranges where she had learned to breathe like stone, strike with the patience of a hawk. She had endured injuries that should have ended her career, but scars only sharpened her resolve. And now, in this moment, as bullets stitched the ground around her, that same resolve made her move like a phantom no storm could touch. The enemy poured fire toward her silhouette, confident she would drop. Yet every time they adjusted their aim, she was already gone, sliding behind shattered walls, using smoke as cover, her rifle cracking only when her sight aligned perfectly with the throat or chest of a target. Each shot was a message. She was not simply fighting, she was dismantling them piece by piece. The SEAL team, pinned behind sandbags and broken vehicles, could scarcely believe it. Men who had seen firefights across Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond now found themselves frozen as one soldier shifted the tide that had crushed them. She planted small charges at choke points, explosives she had crafted herself from the limited gear she carried, turning every alley into a trap, every passage into a grave. Enemy squads trying to flank the SEALs were torn apart by her precise detonations, and the battlefield began to change shape. The retreat order had been given, but suddenly the pressure eased, like a storm breaking under an unseen force. The insurgents grew restless. Their commanders shouted in fury, demanding more men push forward, but panic crept in when soldiers started whispering of a ghost moving through the fire. She fought not with blind rage, but with chilling calculation, her every move designed to buy seconds for the SEALs, to carve holes in the enemy net, to drive wedges into their morale. She moved closer and closer to the fortified compound, and in those moments the SEALs realized she was not advancing for glory or recognition. She was advancing with the precision of someone who had already mapped the battlefield in her mind, someone who knew that if she reached the enemy generals, the entire storm would collapse. Her body bore the strain, sweat streaking through dust, her arm bleeding where shrapnel had grazed her skin. But pain had long ago lost its power over her. When an enemy squad cornered her behind a burnt-out truck, she didn't retreat. Instead, she surged forward with knife and pistol, the fight over before the squad had even processed the blur of movement. By the time their bodies hit the dirt, she was already gone, reloading, eyes set like iron. From the SEAL's vantage point, it was like watching death itself choose sides. For every enemy that tried to hunt her, 3 more fell in confusion, their lines unraveling as fast as they could regroup. What had started as certain American defeat was transforming into something no analyst, no commander, no wargamer could have predicted. One soldier turning the battlefield into her chessboard, forcing enemy generals to realize that the prey they thought they surrounded had become a predator moving for their throats. The general's last stand expanded. Deep inside the fortified compound, the 2 generals believed they had orchestrated a flawless trap. Their bunkers were dug deep beneath reinforced concrete, guards placed in rotating shifts, heavy machine, guns sweeping every approach, and snipers positioned high in broken towers, scanning for movement. They had faced Americans before, and believed they knew their enemy's breaking point. Reports came in that the SEAL team had been ordered to retreat, and they celebrated too early, convinced that the night was theirs. What they did not understand was that someone had ignored that order, someone who thrived not in safety, but in fire. As she moved closer, the air thick with smoke and the ground littered with the fallen, she could hear the guttural barks of the generals directing their forces through radios, sending fresh waves of men to crush the remnants of the SEALs. Yet, with each command came another crack in their control. Her bullets found lieutenants, her explosives shattered armored trucks, and fear began spreading faster than discipline. The generals grew enraged, ordering their soldiers to find the ghost, but the harder they searched, the faster they died. By the time she reached the outer walls of the compound, panic had started to ripple through the enemy. The once iron discipline of the insurgents fractured as rumors spread. That she could not be killed, that she walked through fire untouched, that she was death itself cloaked in dust. Still, the generals prepared, surrounding themselves with their most loyal guards, men willing to fight to the last breath. She studied the compound like a predator circling prey. She knew this was the center, the head of the snake, and if she cut it off, the entire body would collapse. Crawling through rubble, sliding beneath fences, moving with a patience honed over years, she breached their defenses without triggering alarms, each motion a masterclass in controlled fury. By the time she entered the compound's heart, the SEAL team could hear distant explosions and gunfire muffled by concrete walls, radio chatter breaking with shouts of terror. Inside, the fight became brutal. No more distance, no more shadows. This was steel against steel, pistol against rifle, knife against desperation. Guards rushed her in waves, but she dismantled them with surgical precision, each takedown faster than the last. The generals, once so proud and untouchable, now found themselves cornered in their own sanctuary, hearing the screams of their men silenced one after another. One of them tried to rally, firing wildly into smoke, but his bullets hit only walls. The other tried to flee, but she was already behind him, and when the dust settled, both men, the architects of so much bloodshed, lay broken on the floor, their command silenced forever. The echo of that moment rippled across the battlefield. Enemy units outside, suddenly without orders, without leaders, fell into disarray. Some fled into the night, others dropped their weapons, while the remaining few were hunted down by the emboldened SEAL team who now pushed forward, realizing the impossible had just been done. When she emerged from the shattered compound, smoke curling behind her and fire painting the sky orange, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The SEAL team, who had been preparing to fight to their last round, lowered their rifles in disbelief. The generals were dead, the enemy scattered, and the mission that had been declared lost was suddenly a resounding victory. She walked toward them slowly, her steps heavy but steady, her face streaked with dirt and blood, her uniform torn from close combat. Her eyes, however, burned with the same unshakable fire that had carried her through the storm. The men who had doubted her now stared with something beyond respect, something close to reverence. Helicopters roared overhead, extraction arriving too late for the fight, but just in time to carry away the survivors. Yet as the team prepared to leave, they realized this was more than survival. They had witnessed the birth of a legend. Classified. Reports would later bury the details. Commanders would downplay her role, and the world would never know the full truth. But the SEALs who had lived that night would never forget. Around campfires, in barracks, in the silence between missions, they would whisper of the woman who walked into enemy fire, killed 2 generals with her own hands, and turned certain defeat into victory. For her, there was no glory, no speech, no medal pinned on her chest. She disappeared back into the shadows where warriors like her lived, carrying the weight of another battle fought, another promise kept. But legends do not need names. Legends need only truth. And the truth was this: the SEAL team had been called to retreat, ordered to survive, but she had refused to accept defeat. She had destroyed not just enemies, but the very idea that one person could not change the course of war. In her defiance, she had proven that courage, when absolute, does not simply survive fire, it becomes it. And though her story may never appear in books or on screens, in the hearts of those who saw it, she was immortal, a ghost born of war, a flame that no darkness could ever extinguish.